Hey everybody, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini. Welcome to episode number 189. Apologies for the setup. I'm flying solo today as my usual helper is not here. So let's see if I set everything up right. So first, saying hi to some friends. Make sure that y'all can see me and hear me. So if you can let me know that in the chat, I would really appreciate it. So before I start getting into my demo, I can make sure that all the stuff is working over there at the computer, okay? Let's see. We got a bunch of y'all on already. Hey, Barb. Hi, Josie. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Maureen. All right. Hi, Diana. Thanks for tuning in. Michelle. We got Marie in the house. Rose May is tuning in from South Florida. Let's see. Good, good, good. Can y'all see me and hear me? Oh, good. Thank you. Winless Original says she can see me and hear me. Good. Whew. We're working. We're good. And I'm so excited to share with y'all another demo today. Oh, I see this little camera is giving me problems. Hold on. Let me try to replug it in here since I don't have my usual troubleshooters. Hi, it's me. Let me replug this in here and make sure. Hold on. Oh, it's always something with technology. How's everybody doing today? We had bingo today with the senior citizens. I'm going to give it a second just so that cord kind of reloads a little over there. I know it usually takes a little while, and we do that before we go live, so I don't know what's going on today because I had it plugged up for a bit. Hi, Janelle. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Vivian, tuning in from Pennsylvania. Oh, all my friends are on here. You guys are probably wanting to see how to make this demo. So that's my back camera. I'm going to replug it in one more time, and then we're just going to give it a little bit, I guess. Let's see. Let me come around here. Sorry, y'all. We'll see. Okay, I see half of my hand. Sometimes it takes a little bit for it to... Anyway, I'm going to start talking, and hopefully this thing clicks on, so that then we can move on with the actual demo. But I recently shared a new tutorial on my YouTube channel. Surprisingly, it's been kind of popular. I posted it maybe like 2 days ago, and it has almost 17,000 views already. So I think people like it, and so I was thinking maybe we'll do some more quilt block tutorials. Okay, the video that went up on my YouTube channel is just kidding, it's this one. And we did this way back early in the year. Oh, it's so glitchy. Come on, camera. I don't know if I should take it off, put it back. Where's my helper when you need him? I really don't want to mess with nothing else, though. Hold on. I may just have to get rid of my face camera like we did that one time and just go straight to this guy. I think that's what we'll do for now. Okay, let's try it. One camera, because I want to get on with my demo. Do you not want to work? And here I was thinking, oh, I'll do more lives. Let's see. Okay. But am I live, though? Can y'all still see me? Let me make sure that this thing, I didn't disconnect the whole thing now. Okay, good. I am live. Perfect. Let's get on with the show. Great. So I was saying the last tutorial I posted on my YouTube channel is for this block. It's just a variation on a disappearing 4-patch. And so I've been playing around with the exact... I don't know why this thing is so glitchy, y'all. And I have it plugged in, hardwired to the internet too, so that it's not on Wi-Fi. But let's see. Of course, this would happen when he's not here. I was like, oh, I got it. Don't worry about it. Hopefully y'all can hear me, at least. Anybody hear me? Ugh. Let's hope it stays on. Okay, so this is a tutorial. We did this at the beginning of this year. I did just a Whip Wednesday episode showing you how to do this variation. So if y'all don't remember that, maybe you remember these, right? we did some blocks like this, or I showed you them at least, and it was a way to create this disappearing 4-patch block using 2 rectangles, one of a light fabric and one of a dark fabric that are 5 inches by 10 inches. And so I do that with my 5-inch by 10-inch ruler because I use it as a template, not just as a ruler. Obviously for cutting these, we do use it as a ruler since we go in, make a 4-patch, and then cut it up a little bit more. But there is now a shorter version than one of my long ranty live streams like this that you can watch on the Crafty Gemini YouTube channel. And it's short and sweet. I want to say the video is like 6.5 minutes long. Not bad, I think, for a tutorial and instructional. If you're like me, if you're looking for an instructor, you're just like, where's a tutorial that's just gonna like tell me exactly what it is without all that chit chat, right? Live streams are not that. Live streams are for chit chat. So if you're here tuning in, oh, come on. Oh, I looked up and it froze, huh? I really have no idea what's going on. Give me a second, y'all. All right. Oh, Lordy. I'm going to go again. And I'm just going to leave it there for a second. This is getting so old. Okay, I know. Kathy says stop looking up. I got to keep an eye on all the screens here, make sure I'm not completely blacked out. All right. So I said we did a tutorial on this with the 5x10. I wanted to do a demo today on how to make another variation on the disappearing 4-patch block. And if my technology would stay on, maybe I can show y'all how to do it. All right. So here. This is my favorite thing about this and why I thought I would share it with y'all. We are starting off with the exact same, where are they? I'm going to start from squares here because I think a lot of us, if you're a quilter at least, probably have a bunch of 10-inch by 10-inch square pieces of fabric. Here's mine. I got to press this a little bit. And here's another one. So I'm going to share with you kind of a way on how you could use up your 10-inch by 10-inch squares, or if you have a lot of yardage, maybe you have a solid color that's either the light or the dark, you can use that as one, and then the opposite, whatever the contrasting is, right, whether light or dark, you can start, collecting all the little scraps, not teensy scraps, but if you have like chunks of fabric like this that can be cut up into 5-inch by 10-inch or 10-inch by 10-inch squares, then they're going to work perfectly for this. So here is what I wanted to show you first before we get into cutting, okay? With 2 squares that measure 10 by 10 of a light fabric and a dark fabric, right? And when I say light and dark, if you haven't been with me for a long time, you probably may be a little confused. When I say light and dark, I just mean a fabric that plays as the lighter fabric in the combination of the 2 fabrics I have in front of me. So this is the light fabric, right? Because if we're talking about this, and one has to be the light and the other has to be the dark, we have to assign light and dark to each one of these, right? And so this one is going to be my dark, and this will be my light. But the fabrics could also be white and black, right? The white would be your light, and the dark would be the dark, okay? So let's see. Oh, Winless Original says these blocks can make great hot pad gifts. Absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I'm starting off with 2 squares that are 10 inches by 10 inches, okay? And the fact that we can make, from these 2, I can make these 2. Full, okay? Half of this and half of this. We're going to split it down the middle and start off with 2 rectangles that are 5 inches by 10. Boom, boom. And each pair of 5-inch by 10 rectangle of a light and a dark will give me 1 block. So now we're talking kind of efficiency and adding visual interest, right? I don't know about you, but I personally would prefer a quilt that's made up of blocks that look like this and have more visual interest, that I can kind of turn them around, position them on my like my quilt design wall on my wall here to kind of play around. If they're made out of a bunch of different fabrics, you can really play around with them, twist it up, create your own secondary designs and get more visual interest, as opposed to having a quilt that's like this. We've all done it, right? You get a 10-inch square like layer cake pack and you just, oh, they all kind of match. They all go together. Let's just put them nice and plain and sew them together. That's a great beginner quilt, great for getting kids and younger kids that are learning how to sew and quilt, how to, get them to make an actual quilt. But the rest of us want a little bit more interest, especially if we have a lot of experience. And I think these are going to be still beginner-friendly, easy blocks that we will be able to make from this. I think that's a pretty efficient use of the fabric, wouldn't you say? 2 squares like this will yield me 2 blocks like this. So let me show you how we do it. So I cut these already, and I did starch them. First thing you want to do if you're cutting your fabric off the bolt, or you got it from a fabric store or whatever, is starch it or steam it. But you do want to add some type of moisture and then heat with an iron, and that's going to kind of pre-shrink it. You don't want to cut the fabric just as you got it from the store and then go in and steam it or press it after it's been cut to size, because it is going to end up being a little bit smaller, and that's always a mission, okay, to work with. So I'm going to take my Crafty Gemini 5-inch by 10-inch ruler, which we have linked in the video description box below. And if you don't have one of these already, I know several of y'all always chime in and say you have 2 of them. It's one of your favorite rulers. Same for me, okay? We're using it as a ruler and a template. So right now I'm using it as a template because I have a 10-inch square, 10-inch by 10-inch square, and just by aligning the ruler here and here, that's going to be exactly half of the block. So if I hold it, I know that I can slice it right in half. So we got 2 5-inch by 10-inch rectangles. We'll do the same thing to the dark. Make sure that your pieces were cut, right, accurately. So the only thing I will say here is that if you're going to do this with those 10-inch by 10-inch pre-cut squares, be very careful. Because if you've used them before, you know that they're not always 10 inches by 10 inches. So if you end up with a stack that's like a little bit bigger than 10 inches, that's going to be great because you can steam it or starch it and press it and then be able to kind of trim it down. It's just going to take you longer because you're going to have to kind of clean them all up, right? Sometimes they come out skewed. The cutting isn't perfectly straight with those pinked edges and all that. So I personally these days just prefer to cut up my own yardage, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. A light and a dark, a light and a dark. This can give me this block, and this I can turn into this block. And that's just from 2 10-inch squares. So if you're looking for a simple quilt to whip up in time for the holidays or something, give it a try. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is that we started off with 10-inch by 10-inch squares, and these blocks, look how much piecing we have, right? Like we have seams going in different directions. We have a lot of connections, and the more seams and intersections we have here, you know that that means it's shrinking, right? Because we're eating up seam allowances along every single time we sew a seam, right? But we go from 10-inch by 10-inch to 8.5-inch square blocks, which I don't think is very bad. Like we're not really wasting a ton of fabric. We're not eating it up so much that we end up with little tiny blocks. And both of these variations will yield you an 8.5-inch block, which means finished inside the quilt, right? Once something is sewn to all 4 sides, these both will be about 8 inches by 8 inches, okay? And I say about because you know how it is with seam allowances. If you cut and press accurately and you sew accurately, then you will end up with that 8.5-inch square piece block, okay? So this guy, I already have a tutorial. I also have a Whip Wednesday. The step-by-step tutorial that I just mentioned was about 6.5 minutes long, is on my YouTube channel. It's like my most recent YouTube as of today right now, my YouTube video. So we'll set that one aside because I'll probably end up making another one of that. For this guy, let's start off the same way that we do the other variation, but we're going to make a different block this time, okay? For those of you that are tuning in, I'm doing a quick demo on another disappearing 4-patch block variation. So we're going to put them side by side. Doesn't matter if it's the dark on the left or the right, don't matter. Okay, we're going to put one on top of the other with pretty sides touching. And I normally wouldn't use a pin for this, but, you know, let's walk through a full tutorial for those of you that maybe are thinking, I've seen some cute quilts, but I'm scared. Or I have no idea what to do with quilting. This, like I said, is kind of a beginner-friendly one. And if you don't want to do the whole variation of the block, you can also just stop at the 4-patch, which we're going to do so that you can see how to get there. And that's why it's called a disappearing 4-patch, because we start off with a basic 4-patch block, and then we chop it up and play with it to end up with a different block. And if you don't know what a 4-patch is, it's my tattoo here. It's just 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. and it's sewn together. So this is the beginning of this, okay? And we're gonna do that in a minute. So now on my machine, y'all know on this machine, I scoot the needle position over. The center is when this is at 3.5 in the width, and I scoot it to 5 for it to move the needle closer to this edge. So I don't change out my presser foot for 1/4 inch seams. I just scoot the needle over so that the edge of the foot is closer to the needle, so it's giving me a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So I'm stitching straight down. Let's pull this pin out. And a nice short stitch length, okay? I'm just using 2 millimeters in stitch length. And apologies for those of you that like to see my face in the picture-in-picture. Even I like to see my face. Earlier I was like looking at the front camera talking the whole time, and then when I looked I was like, oh yeah, that camera is not on. Oh well. So maybe it's less distracting this way and you can watch my hands work. So we have a seam here. If you have a wooden tailor's clapper, get it. If you don't have a wooden tailor's clapper, get one. It definitely is a game changer. And this is my fancy one. We also sell more basic ones in our online shop, like this, a little smaller one. This one I got from Modern American Vintage, from Chris over at Modern American Vintage. And these we sell in the shop. So like if you've never used them, it's great to have on hand. It really does make a difference. We're kickstarting the iron here. Make sure it's nice and warm. I always press my seams first as it was sewn. And I'm kind of picking up the iron and just stamping it. And then we're going to open this up. And I want to have the dark fabric to my left so that as I lift the darker fabric, I can come in here with the tip of the iron and press in that direction. So this is making the seam allowance go in the direction of the dark fabric, which is this purplish pink print here. So I'm just going to press here, here, here. And again, I'm just kind of stamping it down the middle. And the clapper goes on top right after I hit it with that heat. This adds weight, and the wood absorbs the heat. So it kind of helps set that seam really nice and flat, okay? And if you're a quilter and you've pressed seams, maybe you have like a smaller little iron that doesn't get very hot, and you know you have like that bubbled up area here every time you have a seam, a clapper and a nice heavier, it doesn't have to be super heavy hot iron, but something with some weight that, you know, is gonna add the weight of the iron to the heat, and then the clapper, it's a game changer. Okay, so here is what, a two patch block, okay? We're gonna turn it so the seam is going horizontally in front of me and do the exact same thing I did before. I'm lining up the left edge and the bottom. Here and here, and I'm gonna slice the block in the middle. And here, my friends, is where we are going to just turn one of them. And when we stitch it back, that's our 4-patch block. See how it goes? 1, 2, 3, 4, except these are all 4 different colors. Here we have our basic 4-patch. So even if you're like a first-time quilter, doing this how we just did it, and we're going to stitch this together, you can make a bunch of blocks like this. It doesn't even have to be the same fabrics, right? Like you can do this with a bunch of different fabrics and then take from different fabrics and turn them and match them up so that you do end up with 4 different fabrics. There's so many variations that are still super easy and beginner friendly to do. So I'm going to put it like this visually, how it's going to be once it's sewn. Then we're going to take one on top of the other with pretty sides touching. And then the seam allowances are already going to be going in different directions. So this should be nice and flat there without that much bulk. So do that. And then I'm just going to put a pin in the middle to help hold that intersection. And we're going to stitch this up just here using that same scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that short 2 to 2.4, I would say, millimeter stitch length is going to be good. Okay. Hi, friends. Hi, Lisa. Lisa's Appletown Treasure says, hi, Vanessa. Hi, welcome. All right. I usually, before I get to that seam intersection, I kind of stop and just make sure that I haven't flipped any of the seam allowances in any other direction, that they're still going opposite directions. It's nice and flat. Then I can continue. And we're going to keep going straight down here. If you're wondering how my fabric is so nice and flat and crisp and I barely need any pins or anything, I'm going to say it's because I starch. But if you don't starch, that's cool too. You can at least steam. If you just want to use warm, like warm water, either in a spray bottle or in an iron that can take steam, it's really going to be a game changer when you can add some moisture to that fabric and then the heat of the iron. It just helps everything lie way flatter. So again, we press just as we sewed. And then you can press the seam open here if you want to. ain't nobody got time for that right now. So I'm just gonna lift up one side and press it to that side to the left because I'm right hand dominant, right? So I lift the left side up and I press to the left. That means that whenever I hold any patchwork block, any quilt block, any units that I'm piecing together and pressing, if you lift up the left side and press from here, it's always going to press that seam allowance to your left. So if you needed it to go to the right, you would just flip over the block, right, and do it like that if you're right hand dominant. Meaning you're probably going to be holding the quilt block or fabric with your left hand and the weight with your right hand of the iron that you need to kind of maneuver and manipulate here. It's just some tips, you know, on helping you kind of set it up. Because sometimes we do things one way, the next block you do it the other way, and you can't really get into a rhythm. So that's what I'm sharing there. Hi, Carla, you're not late. I'm just doing a demo on how to take two rectangles that measure 5 inches by 10 inches. We talked about this. This is my latest YouTube tutorial on how to make this variation of a disappearing 4-patch. And I took the exact same starter pieces, these two rectangles here, and we're going to make this variation of a disappearing 4-patch block. Super cute. If you're someone who's wanting to get into quilts that have triangles, but you're scared of like bias edges and angles and all this, this is a cute and easy way to do it. So keep watching. So we have our 4-patch block. If you're a super beginner, you can stop right there and make a bunch of these units, you know, put them together, end up with a whole quilt that is just made up of these squares. Okay? Okay? Diana says, just ask Vanessa, clapper might be used as a bat. Yes. Don't remind me, Diana. Don't remind me. TSA took mine the first time. Well, the last time I bought this exact same clapper from Chris at Modern American Vintage at QuiltCon last year, 2024 or 2023. Girl, I can't even remember. The years just meld together nowadays. But TSA took it. It was brand new. I flipped it over. I was like, I know you see the price on this. The guy was like, yeah, we can because it could be used as a weapon. I'm like, come on, bro. So they took it, but Chris was so nice, he sent me one. So I definitely appreciate it. You can see that's the one that I usually grab for. And one of the reasons and the difference, and there's so many different types of clappers out there, you can even make your own. I love this one because it's flat. It still has that weight to it, but it's the length, right? So when I'm sewing, let's see, a hem, the inseam of some pants or shorts or anything where the seam is longer, I like this because it covers more surface area of that seam, right, than a smaller one does. But, I mean, I did with even a shorter one than this that's a little bit chunkier for years, and all you do is kind of, you know, move it around, move it over. But, you know, those of us that do this stuff a lot, especially as a job, we like to invest in the good gadgets. All right. Hi, Starlin. She says she just got on. I've missed many videos before, but I'm here from New Orleans. Welcome, welcome from New Orleans. Awesome. Yes, Diana says it was Raleigh 2024, so it was last year. Thank you for the reminder. All right. Okay, so we have our 4-patch. So now, how do we go from this to this? I'm going to share something with you, and this is the reason I wanted to do this demo as the tutorial for today. You may have seen other 4-patch, disappearing 4-patch variations, and usually it starts with this, right, because we have the 4-patch, and then you make it disappear by chopping into it and sewing the pieces together. Now, most of the times when we do that, the more you cut into it, the smaller the finished block is going to be. So I'm not a fan of like, let's chop this up in 9 different segments or whatever, because by the time you sew it up, you end up having more seam intersections on the back than anything. But these two variations that I'm sharing with you here, okay, this one and this one, I feel like you get a lot of interest. There's still a lot of pieces, but it doesn't shrink the block that much. Remember, we're going to finish off with an 8.5-inch square block. So here's what we're going to do from this to this. You may have seen maybe in a book or other tutorials or whatever, where you go in and now you cut. Let me grab my pointer tool here. From here to here, okay? And they basically tell you to go in here and slice. Well, and you slice here, okay? You slice here and here along all 4, and as you can imagine, you're gonna end up with something that looks like this, which is basically that inside unit here. Do you see how that's going? This would be like this. But what I don't like about this variation is that, yes, you get something that looks like this, okay? Then those 4 corners that you will have cut off, you would take kind of the mustard green color or mustard colored fabric or chartreuse, whatever this is. You would take this chunk that I cut off and you would put it on the side like this, okay, of the purple. You would put it here. you would take the piece of the purple that you cut off and you would put it here. So you would take that and put it here, right? So you're kind of alternating it. Since you have 2 lights and 2 darks, you will end up with 2 light colored triangle shaped pieces that you cut off and 2 purple ones, and then you just put them in their opposite so that it looks like this, okay? But the main thing that I do not like about that way of doing it is that when you look in the corners here, these points go all the way out to the edge. And if you're a quilter, you know what that means. The block itself is going to look so cute, but when you sew it into a quilt, what's going to happen here? Let's see who we have on today's show. What is going to happen if this intersecting point, instead of being in a little bit like this one is right to the outer edge? Okay, I'm going to grab a sip of water because I don't know why I'm sweating in here. I mean, I do know why. I'm in my 40s. Whew. Okay. I'm waiting to see because I would love to check in on my students here and see. Yes, I'm fanning myself with the 5 by 10 inch ruler. It also is really good for that, as long as you don't hit your face and scratch yourself up. Yes, Margie has chimed in, and so has Tracy with the correct answer, and they're saying you lose your points. Tracy says lose your points. Okay? Carlos says lose the points. Janelle says points get cut off. Demps Design says you'll lose the... Yes, you see? I got students on here who know what they're talking about. You absolutely, in the finished quilt, will have all these crisp points completely chopped off. So guess what I did? I hacked it a little so that we do end up with about a scant 1/4 of an inch of fabric left here. How are we going to do this? Easy. Let me show you. You can mark it if you want to. I think by just explaining it, y'all will get it, since we have so many people here that know exactly what I'm doing. But I think maybe I'll use the blue marker just so people can see a little bit better on camera. So instead of hacking this here, okay, instead of going from the point to the point here, I'm going to zoom this in and hope the camera don't die on me. Okay, so instead of going here to here, anybody know what we can do? Or think about what you think might work, especially those of you that have done any type of triangular patchwork pieces, flying geese units and things like that. You probably are familiar with offsetting things by that 1/4 of an inch. So we are going to come in down this seam intersection a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, here I'm going to come in on the seam line. And I'm marking it across both fabrics because you're going to have 2 lines that need to intersect at that point. So I want to be able to see exactly where it is. Like that. So basically turn your thing around and just come in a 1/4 of an inch on all 4 of those intersections. Okay? I'm eyeballing it. Yes, I'm used to it. But like if you can't, just take your ruler, put the 1/4 of an inch line on the edge, and just make a little mark. The finer your marking tool is, the better it's going to be for you so that you're not, hacking into completely your unit here. But 1/4 of an inch in, I made a mark. 1/4 of an inch in, made a mark. 1/4 of an inch up, made a mark. And 1/4 of an inch in, made a mark. Now, from that point to this point at the seam intersections is where I'm going to hack. Okay? Okay, look how that looks. There's a little bit of that fabric there, a little bit here. You're going to have those little funky bits kind of all around. It doesn't matter. By the time we sew them all together, any little extra thing, we'll just trim it off, okay? So I'm coming here. Remember, not to where it is on the edge of the fabric, not to here, but here. And I'm marking it because you see how, can you see that blue mark that's on my purple fabric? I won't see the blue mark really on the green fabric because I just cut there, right? So that's why I made the mark spanning across both. So we're going to go here and here. And some sides will have more fabric than others because the side that has the seam allowance tucked under, you end up having more of that, like this is what I'm talking about. Don't worry about this stuff. Just leave it, okay? Just keep turning and chopping. And so what we're doing is offsetting everything by that 1/4 of an inch. So when we do stitch it back in, we have that little bit of excess that we need so we don't completely lose our points. Very important. Okay? So remember I said we get 2 lights, 2 darks. We're going to take a dark, put it to the light like that. And then flip it onto each other, pretty sides touching. And then I'm just offsetting this so that you have let me finish getting rid of this. I just didn't cut all the way through. So that I have that excess, okay? Here and here, sticking out the edge of the fabric. I'm not worried about the light fabric. I'm looking at the purple fabric where the seam is underneath. And I want that to align edge to edge on here. Then we're going to take a pin or two, don't matter, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and put it here along this edge. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So I do opposite sides. So if I just put on a purple fabric, I'm going to turn this around, and opposite that edge, I need to grab the other purple fabric too, like this. Okay, so on this side, because I didn't have a seam allowance going there, you don't have seam allowance on the back. But if you are used to maybe like cutting with AccuQuilt, what do you call those, like the dies and stuff, you may recognize this type of a unit, right, where it's offset by a little bit, so that when you sew, it's more spot on, you know, and it's accounting for that 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put this here, flip it, line it up best I can. I really hate this this magnetic pin thing, the Zirkle. This thing was super popular back in the days. It's heavy, it's okay, but like they go all over the place, and I don't know why. The pins get stuck to the bottom. It's just not my favorite, but it's the one that always stares at me most in the face because the pins are like, hi, we're here. And then I go to reach for them, and then I always dread it. But anyway, besides that, now we're going to sew. Okay, so I sew 2 first, and then we press them, and then we'll come back in and sew the 2 lights. All right, so here and here, we're going to stitch scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance this way, and the same on this side. All right, same thing, short stitch length. I have a 2 millimeter stitch length on my machine here set up with that scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm not back stitching on any of these units, just 1, to save time, and 2, because these blocks are not going to be just standalone blocks by themselves. They're going to get sewn along all 4 sides to more blocks potentially, and so there's going to be intersecting seams that are going to help secure that in place. But if you prefer to back stitch every single seam that you do, feel free to do that. Now, sometimes, well, not sometimes, but a lot of times people will ask me like, what thread do I use and all that. And so on this one, let me just scoot this little tidbit out the way. This was the excess of the seam allowance that was pressed in that direction. So I'm just scooting it out the way because that's going to get trimmed off anyways, right? So people usually ask, you know, what type of thread do you use? Or I think these days a lot of people are not even asking because everybody has their own thing, like their own favorite. But I will say, and I'm just chopping this here, you may want to have some type of a really thin cotton thread on hand. I'm using Aurifil thread here. You can see, if you recognize the orange spools, if you know, you know. This one is running low. But I'm using the Aurifil thread because although it's considered a 50 weight cotton thread, I find that it's thinner than most other 50 weight cotton threads that I use. And so whenever I have a quilt block that has a lot of units, like a lot of seams within the one block, I like to go a little thinner on the thread. I just find that everything lies flatter and it's just thinner, right? It helps reduce bulk that I already have from all these seams. So if you have some Aurifil thread in your stash and you haven't used it in a while, give it a try on some of these blocks that have more seams, and you will be pleasantly surprised. Tracy says, Aurifil is the best. Yeah, they have some really good thread. It's so thin, it holds good, and for if you're one of those people that like needs cotton on cotton or really wants, you know, if you're working with cotton fabric to use cotton thread as well, definitely. Definitely some good stuff. Okay, so notice I pressed just as it was sewn, and then I'm going to press away, right, towards the dark. Here and here. And see, for this seam, because it's not that long, I could use my little shorty clapper. Okay, and do the same thing to the other side. Like this. Oh, I see y'all are talking about Taylor's hams, huh? Yeah, I use mine a lot when I'm making clothes. I can show you. It's, and actually this is another one I found in storage. I was looking for some IKEA parts to some shelves, and I ended up finding this one, so I brought it into my studio here. One side is wool, one side is usually like cotton, like a cotton canvasy fabric, or I feel like maybe a twill. I don't know. But it's like a thicker cotton fabric on one side and wool on the other. I'm trying to find my other one. It's somewhere here with all my other pressing stuff. But yeah, they're really good for pressing the shoulder seams, necklines, any curved areas, the sleeves, depending on the size, you know, like that you can drape your project over, especially for garments, and then give it a press to kind of shape whatever that more curved area is, okay? All right, so now, you see that? Cute. Let's grab the light ones now. Same, one ends up having a little bit of extra because of the seam allowance that was going in that direction or that it was on top of. And then the other one is more like that flat on the side. Like this guy's gonna have a little bit of excess there. So that will get chopped off too. Okay, so we're gonna place one here, pin, and sew. So let's do it. My pins. These are great pins too. I go between these glass ones and then the magic pins. These fine ones are really, really good. I think we still have some of these in the shop. I need fine pins. Those clunky, chunky things that you put inside your the fabric layers and you feel it literally like scraping. It's like they're rusted before you even, you know, like when you take them out the pack, that's not it for me. I do not like those types of pins. All right. Another one here and one more here. Okay, let's stitch these guys up. Oh yeah, Rowena says now she recognizes it, the tailor's ham. That's what it, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they come in slightly different shapes. There's some skinnier ones for collars and some chunkier ones, you know, but that's the general idea. Okay, I'm starting here. And this one doesn't, I mean, although we have like these triangular edges and things need to match, that's why I call it like a beginner friendly variation, because even if you're a little bit off, if you do this where you cut into it at 1/4 of an inch away, even if your points are not super perfect, at least they're not chopped off, okay? That's the main thing. You want to avoid that. But if like one gets chopped off here and there, it's not a big deal. But like I do not want to make a block that I know, like I'm making it on purpose, knowing every single point is going to be cut off. Like, nah, we're not doing that here, and I'm definitely not putting that in a quilt. If you want to, that's fine. But for those of you that are kind of looking for some tips and tricks and ways to do stuff that looks, you know, more accurately done, more intentionally made, instead of just like, I'm going to chop up a 4-patch and stitch it back together any which way. You know me. Even when the kids would make stuff like that, I'd be like twitching there, like, oh, I want to fix these points. But I think that's a quilter problem. Okay, here we go. We're going to press here. We're going to press here. And then we're going to press it out again. Here we were saying like pressing to the dark, but really it's just pressing to the outside. So not in towards the center unit, but out this way. Same thing, press, press, press. Okay. This guy too. Then we're going to measure and cross our fingers that this sucker measures about 8.5. If it's 8.5 inches square. And if you want it to be like a little bit more, because if you're someone that likes to kind of trim each of your blocks down as perfectly as possible, then what you can do is just sew a little bit more scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. That way you have a little bit more to work with there. And then you can trim up, you know, slivers here and there. Okay, first I'm going to take a bigger ruler here and give it a rough measure. Okay, look at me, 8 5/8. That's what I'm talking about. So now I actually have room here to trim. This is it. How good is that? Okay, so I do want to make sure that I'm leaving my 1/4 of an inch. So this is the whole reason we measured a 1/4 of an inch and then cut, is so that now we have from here, this is the point. Do you see how far it is from the edge? A 1/4 of an inch. So now when this gets sewn to something else, say a block like this, instead of this little point here being chopped off, if you would do it the other way, your block would look like that. It's not bad. But I mean, if we got points there, let's show them off, especially if we stitch them good, right? And they intersect nicely. We don't want that to be chopped like that. So instead, we now have a 1/4 of an inch left of fabric to the right and to the top and bottom and left of those intersections, so that once it's sewn, This seam ends up right there. And then you have your points that meet up perfectly to the next intersecting chunk of the block, okay? So that's the goal. So let's do it. Let's trim this up. I'm going to just straighten off one side first because this bottom edge is pretty straight. All I have there is like a little sliver of a dog ear. So I'm going to use that one as my guide. 1/4 inch right at that seam intersection. And we're going to trim. And when I trim from one side, the right, I'm going to flip the whole block over. I want to trim on the left now to kind of balance this using that same edge that I used to initially keep the ruler straight, if that makes sense. So I cut here. I'm going to flip it, and I want to cut here next. Here. And so this, because I want it to be 8.5, I'm going to come in a little bit over. Right there is good. That's the intersecting point is right at about 1/4 inch. So we're not really trimming much here. There's nothing else there. It's just that little bit. But now I need to come back here and trim a little bit more because I still want this whole thing to measure the 8.5. So here, now I'm putting 8.5 on that edge. And whatever's sticking out extra here, I'm going to trim off. Which is not much, and I still have a little bit less than a scant 1/4 inch here to use in my seam allowance, but that'll be all right. Like that. I got my little bit there, my little bit there. Now we'll turn it and do the same thing to these two sides. So because we're trying to balance this out and make it 8.5 by 8.5, you don't want to just like measure from one edge and hack everything else off. If you do that, chances are you're going to cut off your points, or you're not going to have enough fabric there to, you know, preserve that point in the finished block. So it's kind of balancing the difference here. So I'm going to go here. We'll leave it like that. It's like splitting the difference. You know, it's like a scant 1/4 inch. Like that. Leave myself a little bit there. And do the same thing to the other side. 8.5. And like that. We'll just chop off this little bit. So now we have 2 blocks, right? With the same type of variation. We started off with the same 2 rectangles. Okay, one light, one dark. That's 5 inches by 10 inches each. And then, whoop, we turned them into these 2 blocks that now measure the same. So think about it in terms of quilt design, okay? If you made a bunch like this and a bunch like this, and I'm showing you here obviously with the same fabric, but if you had a 10-inch square of a ton of different fabrics, I would match them up, a light with a dark, boom, a light with a dark, and set those aside so that you can still bring the blocks together like this so that each block has a light and a dark in it. You can make a bunch of these and then play around with where you want that to be, okay? So like this, you would have to where it alternates, right? It goes from this to this. But if you had it this way, you'd have to play around with other blocks on top to see, let me see if I have an extra one here, to see what like a 4-patch unit of this would be, you know? So if we have this and this here, and I'm trying to put it so that all the purple stuff is going into the middle. Oh, and I don't have another one of this one. But you can see what would be reflected here, right? It would be like another little kind of upside down heart. So if you did this, you would end up with that reflected across, right? And so then, yes, they were made as individual blocks, but you could put them together to where 4 of them together equals, actually, it's not the same fabric, but we'll pretend. So you can see what I'm talking about here in the middle. And this, if you're a long arm quilter or a free motion quilter, this is a dream for us. When we have smaller units, but then when larger units of the same fabric come together, this would now give you here kind of like a blank canvas to do some really pretty quilting in a larger chunk that's not just a quilt block. So thinking about the quilt block design and how it's going to come together also will set you up for the quilting part of it if you're someone that's going to do, you know, custom quilting in these areas. But this would be a big chunk. If it was all like the same fabric, you would have this big chunk here to really play around with some pretty stuff in there. Okay? And so then it could be individual blocks that come together to make a bigger unit, okay, of stuff. Does that make sense? So hopefully it does. Now, if you wanted to do it scrappy, You could have different blocks of all the different things, right? And have it come together like this. If you didn't want these two touching here, you could spin it around so that at this point it's all like different fabrics that come together, and you have kind of more movement going on with this kind of spinning this way. This one is kind of turned that way, right? So just by making simple blocks, focusing on making the blocks like one at a time, you could create stacks and stacks of these and then spend some good time on your design wall, placing them there, stepping back, taking a picture with your phone. Not like this. This is old school picture, but you know what I mean? Snap a picture with your phone. You can set it to black and white just to kind of get an idea of where all the lights and darks are, especially if you're going to be using fabrics that are not true lights and true darks next to their fabrics. Like if you choose two fabrics that are a little bit closer in value, then you could be like, oh, I don't like that block, pull it out, make another one that's more high contrast like some of these and put it in there. So, I mean, there's so much that you can do, so much that you can do by only knowing how to make just a couple of simple little blocks like this, okay? So hopefully y'all enjoyed that step-by-step tutorial. If you want me to do a standalone tutorial for my YouTube channel, another one, 5 to 7 minute video or so on just how to go from this to this variation of the disappearing 4-patch, let me know. So maybe I can take out some time and work on doing something like that. But I think it's so fun that this and this equals this or this. And that's only 2 variations of that disappearing 4-patch block. So I'm kind of in the mood for quilting, plus I have a couple quilts that I need to make. So I'll be sharing more quilty stuff with y'all. If you're not yet subscribed to my email newsletter, make sure that you sign up. The link is in the description box below. You can find it at craftygemini.com/newsletter, okay? And that will get you all signed up so you stay in the loop of what we have going on here at Crafty Gemini headquarters. And then a last reminder that, not Friday, Sunday of this week, October the 5th, at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time is the last day to sign up at the early bird sale price of my Mystery Mini Bag Club number 2. The info for that is also in the video description box below. I also included it in today's email newsletter that went out before today's show. Oh, thank you, Mari. She says, yes, please do a standalone video. Okay, definitely. Excuse me, let me drink some water. Winless Original says, I like how piecing them accentuates the look of the hearts. Absolutely. Right there. So cute. I think it's fun to play around with if you have scrap fabrics that you're thinking, oh, I don't really want to do anything with it. I don't know what I want to do. Why not? Let me make a quilt. Start pulling out those blocks, okay? Because remember, we started off with one 10-inch by 10-inch square of yellow or green, whatever chartreusey color, and one 10-inch by 10-inch square. If you have one 10-inch by 10-inch square piece of a light and a dark, you can make 2 blocks. 2 blocks, y'all, like this, one like this, and one like this. So I feel like going from 10 inches to 8.5, I mean, we get so much going on in the finished block itself without wasting too much fabric. So give it a try. Hopefully you, have some fabrics in your stash that have that high contrast, like lights and darks, and that it'll work for you. Barb says she's all signed up on the Mystery Mini Bag Club. Awesome. Yes, thank you, Diana, for posting. She says October 5th, the Mystery Mini Bag number 2 closes at the sale price, that is. Yes. Oh, good. Janice says, I can't forget to sign up her birthday present to herself this month. Awesome. Happy birthday to you, Janice. Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, thanks for putting up with my technological issues over here, my technical difficulties. But when my helper is back next week, we shouldn't have any issues for next week's show. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. I will keep y'all posted on when the standalone tutorial for this block goes up, and that way you can kind of be saving them and have yourself like a little library archive of quick and easy blocks. So whenever you need a last-minute quilt project, you can give these a go. Because we know working with little teensy blocks is not a quick quilt. So 8.5, I mean, it's still kind of small, right? A 12-inch block would be better, but I feel like there's not that much work involved. We don't have to start off with, super big pieces and they end up shrinking down. So I think this is a good balance between using the most out of our fabric, working with fabric that is easily accessible, whether you're cutting the 10-inch squares from your own yardage or pulling out those old layer cakes that you have hidden away in a bin in your stash. Yeah, I think this is just an overall cool little variation on a basic 4-patch that anybody can try out. You can always also just do them all the same, So like if you just made them all in this variation, you can see that now you put them together and you're going to get more like a star shape, right? If we have a bunch of these lined up that way. All right, so thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see y'all in the next video. Thanks again to everybody who signed up for the Mystery Mini Bag Club. I got to walk around here and end this thing. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can find me at Vanessa@craftygemini.com, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.